Alright, so I have the remote telescope running outside. Right now it's pointing at Regulus. I'll probably try and take some pictures of the nearby galaxies in Leo just to sort of warm up. So this is the first time I've tried flat frames. I finally got some electroluminescent panels so I can actually take accurate flat frames. I tried the t-shirt method, but I couldn't get even illumination with a flashlight. I kept getting gradients. So this is my first hopefully successful attempt with usable flats. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to sync onto Regulus. So I just want to nudge the telescope, get the alignment as good as possible. That way when I hop to one of the galaxies, I'm not too far off. Increase the frame rate just so it's a little more responsive. Yeah, it's probably close enough. I'll go to the star chart program, select Regulus, go to telescope, sync. Just double checking that this little green light is on. If it's red, then the telescope's not connected. I've been having trouble for whatever reason. This program drops the connection. Meanwhile, ASCOM maintains the connection, so it's a little weird. So now that that's all synced up, I can accurately slew to a nearby galaxy. I'm kind of curious to see if this will show up. This UGC 5470. My guess is it's probably very low surface brightness, but it might be a good test for the flat frame. So yeah, I dropped the telescope connection. For whatever reason, it does this a lot for me. So I just got to keep an eye on that little green light to make sure it's still connected. There we go. I nudged. You can see the little white preview shows where the telescope is pointing. So if I go to the big camera view, we should be able to compare the stars visible here against the star chart, see if we're pointing in the right spot. I don't need the crosshairs anymore. So I can see a couple bright stars down here, so I'll compare it against the field of view in the star chart program. Kind of hard to see with all the galaxies, or the icons for the galaxies, so I'll turn those off just so we only see the stars, and I think those are the stars we're seeing, so it looks like the telescope's pointing in the right spot approximately. Let me just double check the brightness of this thing. Might have a good chance of seeing it. So I'm going to increase the exposure, and I'm going to watch the histogram down here and make sure that this peak comes off the left side. I think this might be too bright for 8 seconds. It'll be twice the brightness, so this thing, that looks good. You can see the diffraction spikes from Regulus down here. Looks like we've got something fuzzy right there. So I'm gonna start the live stack now. I'll clear out the old information. Turn on the align frames. So that will compare the stars in every new photograph and line it up to the previous ones. And that accounts for sort of the sloppiness of my mount. It can't track perfectly over, you know, more than a minute. It starts sort of meandering around. So I can definitely see something right there. And if I stretch the view, what I'll do, I'll slide this black point to just where the main peak starts, and then sliding the gray point down here sort of accentuates the very dim stuff. So it looks like I still have a slight gradient, brighter on this side, darker on that side. So I'll see if it's better or worse without my flat frame on. I'm gonna guess it's probably better. I remember I had a big piece of dust on there, and I don't see it anymore, so it's doing some good. This might be sensor glow, or amp glow, thermal noise, because my dark frame library is pretty out of date. But I can definitely tell that there's something right there. It looks about the right size for that object. So this was UGC 5470, and that bright one that we could see next to it looks like IC 591. I'll label it before I forget. I'm also shooting over a garage to the east, so this might be actual sort of light pollution gradient, hopefully. We'll see when I start shooting towards zenith if it's any better. There's definitely something there. It's still pretty gritty and grainy with noise, but as we accumulate more frames and they get stacked and our total exposure time or integrated exposure time increases, it should smooth out. But this small compact one is pretty bright. Looks like there's even more. One there, one there. There's the bright one, the small one. If we go back to the planetarium and turn on all the outlines, you can see the whole field of view is just riddled with galaxies in the background. It looks like it has sort of a gritty, mottled texture. Still a little uncertain if that's a result of the noise or if that's real, but it'll become more certain as we accumulate more light. And this little small one's really nice and defined. Looks like reasonably high surface brightness. So I'm going to save it as it looks now. So hopefully this large gradient from left to right sort of goes away when we start aiming towards the zenith, away from that garage. The neighbor on the far side has a lot of backyard lights. So I'm hoping that's what that is, and it's not flat frame issues. But this is really my first try with flat frame, so could be that. Yeah, I think that's definitely the real gritty. You can see it's sort of speckled, it's not completely uniform and even. I'll save another one before I move on. Alright, so now we'll go start looking for some other galaxies. Looks like a pretty tight group of 3 right there that we could fit in. Looks like maybe 3 elliptical ones. Probably not a lot of detail. That small one looks like it might have some detail in it. So I check my connection up there, go to telescope slew, and hope it moves. Yeah, this is still in the live stack and it still has the other picture sort of in memory. So if we close it, it'll go back to the individual exposures, and I'll drop the time just so it's easier to adjust. But it looks like pretty well centered. There's the 2 larger, brighter ones, and I think the smaller one was down there. We can check the star chart. Yeah, there's a line of 3 stars right there. Again, it's pretty hard to see with all the galaxies in the preview. So I think that's pretty well framed. We can start a new stack here. Take it back up to 4 seconds. I think 8 seconds we were using last time. Mainly I'm just looking for the histogram, sort of all of the pixel values to come off the left side, which is sort of the black, no data. So this is still the old one in memory, so we'll clear it and start a new live stack. And you can see how noisy the individual frame is when it's stretched like this. But it should get better and better, or smoother and smoother. Sort of the first 10 frames you can really see the improvement of stacking. I think the total noise in the final picture is related to essentially the square root of time. So in the beginning of the stacking, the improvement's really fast, but you sort of get diminishing returns the longer you wait. Hey Pat, I see your comment there. I've seen your stuff on Cloudy Nights too. It's pretty awesome. So this is a lot of fun being able to stream. So I definitely still have a gradient from left to right. I'm still in the same area of sky, so there's still a small chance that that might be related to lights, but maybe not. So here I'm just essentially just playing with this until it looks good. No real rhyme or reason, just kind of iterative. You can see what happens. So if anyone's not familiar with a histogram, this is sort of a plot of pixel values. So all the way down here at the left is 0, no light collected. And then all the way on the right is white, full, maximum value, bright white. And the blue line represents how many pixels, or the height of the blue line represents how many pixels have a particular value of brightness. So you can see a dark sky, or sort of the gray sky, on average everything falls in one area. And you have these galaxies, and if I unstretch this, if I bring everything back to where it was, this is sort of what the raw picture from the camera looks like. And you can see that it's, gray sky, gray galaxies. And what we want to do is to take that very small difference in brightness between the slightly brighter gray galaxy and the gray sky and stretch it so that it's way more apparent. So if we take the black point and move it right to where the sort of average sky brightness is, we can now make the sky nearly black. If we take it too far, everything becomes black and we really start losing all the detail. And the sort of final positioning of this is all preference, but somewhere around the beginning of that peak. And the gray point, which controls how sort of the picture gets remapped between black on this line and white on this line, you can control at sort of what point gray is. So here I'm making gray much closer to black, which means the difference between, this shade of gray and this shade of gray becomes much sort of greater, much faster. So mostly you just mess around with it until it looks good. Now when I'm usually viewing, I make the sky a little darker and I don't stretch it as aggressively. But when I've watched the saved streams, not a lot of detail is visible. So I'm trying to stretch it a little more aggressively than I normally do, so it hopefully looks a little better on the stream. But you can definitely see two nice big elliptical galaxies, and then the smaller one here definitely has some detail in it. I can try and push the stretch, be a little more aggressive with it and try and show more detail. But it also, pushes the noise, shows the very slight differences in pixel values. So the more aggressive you try and stretch, the longer you should sort of wait to accumulate data. If you stretch too much too soon, you get very, very noisy pictures. And there are some enhancement, sort of noise reduction and sharpening tools built into SharpCap. I haven't played around with them too much. I tend to go kind of ham-handed and overdo it, and it ends up looking worse than it did to begin with, but you can play with them. Like that looks terrible. I have no idea what I'm doing, really. I just move it around. If it looks worse, move it the other way. If it looks better, keep moving it that way until you go too far. Ooh, that's too much. It looked like it did help a little bit. Definitely accentuates the noise too, so it's a trade-off. Thanks for the feedback, Chris. It's hard for me to tell on this end. So I'm going to get a name for these so I can save it. M105 and friends. I'll zoom back out to make sure I got the whole picture before I save it, or else I could completely blow out one side and the other would be dark, which kind of is the case with the gradient. But I think that looks pretty good as it is, so we'll save it. So I'm going to preemptively stop the live stack and get the camera ready for slewing. So now it's little short 2-second exposures that makes it easy to see where the camera is moving in a reasonable amount of time. Okay, so that is part of the Leo trio. So the other members are down here, or one of the Leo trios. I think the famous Leo trio is back here towards the rear leg. You can see Regulus, kind of I'm sorry, Leo, Regulus here, and the head of the lion, the tail of the lion, and under the back end is a tight, compact group of galaxies. We'll check that one out after we take a look at one of these. So I just want to get a preview of what it looks like. I think I imaged these a couple days, or maybe a few weeks ago. This one I think looks really cool. Almost looks like a TIE fighter or a Pokeball. So this one is NGC 3351. You can see there's a little bit of a double image here. I've got two catalogs going. So sometimes it gives me, yeah, more commonly known as M95. I'm terrible with names and numbers. So I'll take a look at this one. I'm curious to try it with the semi-flat frame correction. So it looks like it's a little bit low, so I can use the little telescope control to try and nudge the view. Wrong way. That's pretty close to center. Just going to increase the exposure again, looking for the histogram to come off the left side. I don't remember if I saved that last live stack. So before I clear it, I'm going to save it. Forget if this was M95 or M96. So I've cleared the live stack and we'll start accumulating new frames. You can already just start to make out the sort of TIE fighter shape. This is the wide field camera. You can see pretty close to a tree. All right, it's M95. And it's just sort of rinse and repeat. You just play with the sliders as more and more frames come in. It looks like we got a satellite. We'll check out the wide field and see if we can see it going by. I don't see it. That line will get fainter and fainter as more frames come in, because it's only there on one individual picture. On average, it'll disappear. can start to make out the sort of fainter outer extension. You can very clearly see the almost circular inner area with the bar going across and the very bright core, but there's a sort of much fainter halo around it. See if I can stretch it and make it a little more prominent. I think on this next one I'll be curious to turn off the flat frame correction just to see if it's better or worse. I'm hoping it's better with it on, but not sure. So I'm not sure if the gradient across the picture is due to amp glow or if it's due to a bad flat frame. So my dark frame library for this camera is not complete. I'm using a dark frame that's for a very slightly different gain setting, and it was taken a long time ago on a different temperature, so it could be the dark frame and it could be amp glow. But this particular sensor is pretty well behaved. It's a IMX 290 mono, and some people don't even use dark frames at all with these ones. What I can do is I can turn off my dark frame and see if it's any better or worse. Actually, what it might be, the dark frame that I'm using is old enough that it may have been created in the opposite orientation, so that it's adding where it should be subtracting and subtracting where it should be adding. Looks like we have another satellite coming in right here. SharpCap doesn't keep track of camera rotation and flip. I personally like to flip the camera when I do a meridian flip so that north is always up. But all the calibration frames don't rotate with the camera, so it becomes a little tricky. I'm going to try and save a stack before that satellite cuts across, because it's going to go right through the middle. This one's going a lot slower than the other ones. If I look at the individual frame, you can see how short that motion is. I wonder if it's a geostationary satellite, because usually a satellite will streak, halfway across the field of view in a single frame. This one's going really slow. We could probably figure it out, because we know that it's a 8-second exposure. If we could count the number of pixels, calculate the arc seconds, and if it's close to 15, or would it be 15 times 8? So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn off my dark frame subtraction and see if see if that gradient becomes less. If that's the case, then I'm going to have to manually go into the folder, open the dark frame, and rotate it in Microsoft Paint or something and relabel it as flipped. And then when I apply it, it should help. So I'm going to clear the stack. Oh, we might as well point at something new while I do this. That's really cool. It's the first geostationary satellite I've seen with the camera. Oh, I should have synced before I slewed. That's okay. It looks like we're pretty centered anyway. So I'll bring it up to 8 seconds. And this is M96. At a glance, this side looks slightly brighter. Now, without even starting the live stack, we could stretch the individual frames histogram to see if we can show any slight gradient. But it actually looks pretty good, so I'm thinking maybe that dark frame is 180 degrees rotated. Because right now we're not using one and it appears to be a little flatter. Looks like sharp cap's hung up a little bit. I can't really click anywhere. Come on. I'll give it a couple more seconds and I'll end it. Yeah, oh well. We'll see if it closes gracefully after it takes everything else with it. Connect to the camera, open up the panel, make sure, yeah, the defaults that it opens up with are a little too dim. I think we were doing 8 seconds with a gain of, I think, 3100. That looks pretty good. So we'll start the live stack. Make sure align frames is on. This was M96, I think. Yeah. So I still have the gradient there. Don't remember if it's any better or worse. It looks like a neat barred spiral. I'm going to see if I can open open that dark frame library folder and put reverse the dark frame that I'm using. Hopefully this is built into SharpCap someday and I don't have to do this. Alright, so I should be able to try that on a future live stack. Looks like this one also has a very faint outer halo. I'll see if I can stretch it to be a little more apparent. So it looks horribly noisy, but I'm hoping it's stretched enough so that you guys can see there's a much larger, dimmer, diffuse extension, sort of elongated north to south around it. Looks like a nice dust lane right there. Huh. Oh, I thought my dark frame was still applied. So I'm going to try and apply the flipped one. See if it works, hopefully. And we'll find a new target. I'm going to save this before I move on. We'll see if we can get both of these in the same field of view. tell the telescope to slew to something in the middle. Looks like it's moving. We'll go to sharp cap, turn the frame rate down, exit the live stack, go 2-second exposures. It looks pretty even. So I'll go back to 8-second exposures, and now we have the flipped dark frame applied. So this will either make that gradient much better or much worse, or it won't do anything at all, and that'll suggest that it's a flat frame issue. Even in the single frames, those look pretty cool. That one has tons and tons of detail. So we'll start the live stack, clear the old information, get this giant bar out of the way. That looks fantastic, aside from the noise, but you can definitely tell that this one on the left is going to look really cool once the stack starts to clean up. So M66 and M65. That looks, that's awesome. I really love the monochrome sensor, just the incredible fine detail that it gets. You can see tons and tons of detail in the dust lanes, high contrast in this galaxy right there. That looks awesome. It's really ragged. And this one, you can almost see kind of concentric rings in a dark dust lane right there. So we still have that very strong gradient left to right. So I'm thinking that's probably a issue with the quality of my flat frame that I captured. That's a bummer. The 178 mono looks like a pretty cool sensor, and I think the 183 is the same sensor, just larger. I've got a pipe dream of trying to run one of those in a 16-inch motorized Dob with a focal reducer, but I don't have a Dob like that yet, and a focal reducer probably wouldn't cover the sensor very well, but it would be pretty awesome if it did. Have you tried binning the 183? Just to get ridiculously fast frame rates at the expense of resolution? This one on the left looks fantastic. I think that was M66. Yeah. So tonight I'm not using any filters. I only have a UV IR block filter and a ultra high contrast filter. They're both cheap ones from SV Boni. But I've used the ultra high contrast on like the horse head, and it's really nice with the monochrome camera. It makes a big difference. I made a upgraded my focuser. I took the plastic rack and pinion out of the small Meade Mini Lightbridge 114, and I replaced it with a really short throw double helical focuser meant for guide scopes. It only has about 10 millimeters of throw, but it's a really nice and fine adjustment. But the problem is it has a shoulder at the bottom of the draw tube, and I can't fit my little C-mount to 1 1/4 filter thread adapter plus a filter in without bottoming out, and there's not enough in focus to focus with it. So I have a little tiny short adapter on the way that'll let me use my filters again. But the new helical focuser has been awesome compared to the old one. And I printed a Batinov mask, so the combination of the two has been just a dream compared to sort of eyeballing the plastic focuser. These two are looking really nice. I'll see if I can stretch the histogram. Whoop. And bring out any more faint detail. You can see as I stretch it more aggressively, the gradient is also exaggerated. So if I could get my flat frame working so that I had a nice, even illuminated field, I could really push the stretch. But I can only go so far with the gradient there. This looks awesome.
It does look really good.
I'm so happy with this monochrome camera.
It's crazy. You can really see the depth.
Yeah. I really love the detail and contrast and all the swirled up dust lanes and arms in this one.
I like the one on the right. That's my favorite light.
This is so cool. Yeah, this one definitely looks very 3D. Like you can almost see sort of a bright area on this dust lane, sort of rim lighting on it. It gives it a really, and you can see right there where sort of now it's behind the core and it's lit up instead of a shadow. It's a really, really cool looking thing. We'll zoom in. This is just sort of empty zoom at this point. We're a little more than pixel per pixel, but it might look better on the stream with the compression. You just got to stand back from the display.
It looks pretty good.
And this little telescope isn't coma corrected, and it's f4. So the very center of the field of view is nice and sharp, but towards the edges it gets a little blurrier. So splitting the difference between these two is nice for composition, but I think it may even be a little better if I were to center each one individually. But I don't know, I might be approaching my seeing limit. I think the pixel resolution for this combination is 1.3 arc second. So it's pretty close to the seeing that we get around here. I think we average like 2.
The only difference if you centered the right one, you'd have a darker background.
Yeah.
Gradient.
So I'm going to save that before a satellite goes flying across.
Can they hear me talking?
That's fine.
I was going to say I like the ones artistically. I like the ones like the satellite. I don't know why. It kind of. I was kind of sad that you didn't say it.
I thought I did.
Oh, you did?
I hope I did. Oh, you can check the folder. But it's really cool when a plane flies by.
It's cool.
You can see all the lights.
It reminds me that I'm looking up through an atmosphere and out.
Yeah. It's like Lomo photography almost.
Yeah, 'cause sometimes when looking at pictures of galaxies, they can feel a little bit disconnected from where you're trying to photograph them. I know that's probably the point. It's like looking up through water.
Yeah. I'm going to turn off both of the calibration frames and see if it's worth using my flat frame if this gradient is caused by it. So I'll pick a new target.
I would say the gradient looks a lot more even than it did before.
Yeah, definitely.
A lot easier to fix in post.
Before it was definitely a circular gradient,
Yeah.
Definitely a vignette, where now it's almost completely linear. That looks pretty cool. I think this one's also called the hamburger. Maybe.
Nice dark
I might have them confused. A little slew here. So far the telescope's been behaving. A lot of times it disconnects me. This is M... Oh. I guess a real... No M. 3628. So this is still showing the live stack of the previous one. So what I can do is switch it over to show the individual frames, and it looks like it's pretty well centered there. And we're already at 8 seconds, so I'll just start the live stack. Oops, that was still going. Clear the old one. Oh, I forgot to switch over to show the live stack. We're still looking at the individual frames. So now I have my flat frame turned off. You can see there's a little hint of vignetting, so it did something, but there's still a strong gradient left to right.
Yeah, that's really cool.
I think it might have looked nicer with the flat frame on. The gradient was just, yeah, it was more linear from one edge to the other. So I'll turn it back on.
And a little bit less strong.
I'll just restart the stack here. Probably didn't have to restart, just because the corrected frames would start averaging in. And there's still a slight chance that this could be atmospheric. just because I'm pointing kind of medium low to the east. So once I find something towards zenith, maybe that gradient will go away, and maybe I really do have a good flat frame. Who knows? I'm going to start looking at the Rochester Astronomy website, see if I can find some bright supernova that are visible tonight. Another satellite. This website's awesome. You try and put this over here. So this browser window is coming from my local desktop that I'm using, and this screen is the remote desktop from outside, so it gets a little funny trying to show both. I'm gonna take the stream preview off and keep it on this side. Oop. So this is a list of the brightest supernova listed by magnitude. And currently there's an extremely bright one, but it doesn't have, or its host galaxy is anonymous. It's so small and faint, but the supernova itself is shining like a star. It's so bright. Someone said that it's pretty low to the south, and I have a very poor view to the south, so we might not be able to get this one. I will try to enter the coordinates into the planetarium program. I'll try and keep the view of the live stack showing too. Well, that's interesting. Let me adjust the histogram, see if we can stretch any more from it.
It's really pretty.
So this is pushing it a little bit with the noise, but it still looks pretty cool to be able to pull out that much detail.
That's super cool.
I hope this doesn't break the connection to the telescope. Hide that. Just keep an eye out on that little green light. And I forget exactly how to manually enter an object in this one. That'll do it. All right. 12 hours, 7 minutes. 32 seconds. Plus 43 degrees. 29 minutes. I'm just going to double check. Yeah, that's the wrong one. Figures. Reading the wrong. This is for a Supernova AT. This is the really bright one right here. Nope, didn't want to click that. This is a really bright one, but I entered the coordinates of this one. So might as well see where that one is. Most of the supernova are a lot easier to find because they actually have a cataloged parent galaxy, and you just punch in the galaxy in the star chart and it'll pop up. Let's see where this one is. So that might be in a tree for me. Try it though. Double check my telescope's connection. So this one is very faint. I think the last measurement was magnitude 20, so I might not even see it. And there's no good reference image of it, so I might pick an easier one to try first. I'll check in on the live stack. Give it a little more screen space. See if we can stretch it a little more. New feature in SharpCap is to do a logarithmic x-axis, which can help stretching the really fine, dim details. That looks really cool. You can really see sort of the cloudy appearance of that dust lane and the flared, dimmer ends. I'm going to see if I can find a brighter supernova to shoot for. Yeah, that really bright one has a declination of -32, and at our latitude of 42 degrees, that makes it pretty low over the southern horizon. I'm almost certainly not going to be able to see that one. So, We'll pick one that has a parent galaxy that's cataloged. UGC 4551. No luck. We'll see if it has a different name. PGC 2452-8. Hey, alright. Alright, I'm probably not going to be able to see that one. Looks like it's a little too far west right now, if that's Perseus. Oh no. Yeah, we'll have a good chance of seeing this one. And it'll be closer to zenith too, so we'll be able to check if my flat frame has trouble or if it's just the light pollution gradient in the sky. So I don't have a I think what I'll do is I'll go to a bright star nearby and sync on that, and that way the go-to to this faint object is a little more accurate. So we'll slew to this star. Hope the telescope is listening. Looks like it's still connected. We can check the wide field camera to see that we're moving. There's a tree just went by. Looks like maybe we're doing a meridian flip. So now that if we did do a meridian flip, then all my views will be 180 degrees rotated, which is kind of annoying. Or it's easy to flip the view, it's just all the calibration frames that are difficult to flip. So this is still the live stack, the previous view. And I'll save it before I clear it. It's pretty close to center. I'll just sort of nudge it and just to improve the alignment a little better. Oh yeah, definitely don't want to wait 8 seconds for every screen update. That's probably pretty close. We'll sync there. It's funny, it calls it UGC 4551 when I click on it here, but when I search for it, nothing came up. So don't need the crosshairs anymore. We'll increase the exposure. Looks like maybe something fuzzy right there. A bright core of a galaxy. So I haven't flipped the views. I could, because I have the flat frame. I can rotate the flat frame. For this one, I might start the stack just how it is. And then while this is stacking, I'll work on creating a rotated flat frame. So we definitely have a galaxy right there. I'm going to see if I can find a reference image. Hopefully one that's pointing out which point of light would be the supernova, or at least one that's old enough that there is no supernova, and then we can sort of do a coarse blink comparison and see which one of these points of light is new. That'll be tricky. All the reference images are north up, whereas this is 180 degrees rotated. But the vignette definitely looks a little better. Might still be there. Let me see. I'll do an aggressive stretch to make sure. It's still there a little bit. Trying to find and download a reference picture so that I can flip it. That way it's in the same orientation as the live stack. So I've got some from 2001, so that should be plenty old enough. But they're fits. I need a simple format that I can manipulate. saving a label so I can remember which one we're looking for. So the supernova is mag 14, last measured on the 12th. And the one reference picture I did find, and remember this is rotated 180 degrees, it looks like the supernova is inside the sort of blown out core, so I don't think we're going to be able to detect it. So I'll see if we can find a better one. Bummer. So I'll just go down the list and find the next brightest one that has a cataloged parent galaxy. Hey, M31. That's definitely below the horizon for me. Or behind a tree. Looks like this one's another one that has a supernova in the bright central region. I don't think we'll be able to see it. It's southern hemisphere. While I search for something, I can point to a larger galaxy. Looks like there's a pair right over here, not too far. Huh. Looks like a barred spiral. That might look nice live stacked. So we'll try and slew there. And I'll let that live stack as I try and find a potential supernova that we could look at. So it looks like we're on target. Looks like a couple fuzzy objects towards the center. So we definitely have, looks like 3. I only saw 2 on the star chart at first glance. Maybe the label is covering it. Yeah, so 3. Bright star there. Let's just want to confirm I'm looking at the right spot. All right, so there's the bright star. Remember, the view is flipped to 180 degrees. So we'll start live stacking from here. Clear the old one, and I'll add a label before I forget. NGC 2769. Although this one looks like it might be a little more interesting, so we'll name it after this one, 2771. So I keep forgetting to turn back the view to the live stack. I still have that gradient left to right. Looks like there's tons of galaxies in there. I think that's one and that's one. Looks like we might have a chance on this one. This one is in UGC 7744. Doesn't like searching for UGC. Kind of annoying. So I'll see if it goes by another name. There we go. PGC 041851. Yeah, this one looks like a small barred spiral. Like a teeny tiny little TIE fighter. So that's been about 4.5 minutes of live stack. I wonder what the magnitude on that little galaxy is. Guess it doesn't want to tell me. Nope, not today. This is silly. Yeah. You have to search for it in one name, and then when you find it, it's the original name that you couldn't search for. So, program's a little funny. So it looks like we'll have to meridian flip again. That's alright. So far I've been pretty lucky. Its mount's been behaving. So we've got some reference images on this one, which will help. Again, I still have to, actually no, now that we've meridian flipped back to where we originally were, everything's right side up. So we'll check out some reference images. Go to sharp cap. Still showing the live stack, so we'll show the individual frame. Decrease the exposure. There's a little too many small galaxies, so I'll temporarily hide them so we can see there's a bright star towards the center and an almost nearly straight line of dimmer stars. So we'll look for that in sharp cap's live feed. And then we want to aim slightly below that bright star. So there's the straight line and the bright star. So we can use the ASCOM controller to try and nudge that to where we need it to be. So I think the object is right about there. So let's see if anything shows up when we increase the exposure time. Maybe something right there. Hard to tell. I want to try and get a angular size. It might be so tiny. So we'll go to the live stack, clear the old stuff, view the live stack, and This should just get better and better. So it's pretty small, just 1 arc minute by 0.2 arc minute. So it should be maybe 50 pixels long. I think we can see it right there. So it's really, really small for my camera. Looks like a satellite went by too. But even from here, I can definitely tell that there's a bright point. And if we look at the reference image before and after, in this one, the before picture, the galaxy is very sort of uniform, highly elongated, assuming edge-on spiral. But after the supernova, there's a very condensed bright point, and it looks to be about, slightly above center. And in our picture, we've got a bright point slightly above center. So I think we definitely captured the supernova here. Just going to label it so I know what the save file is. This is really teeny tiny. See if the stretching will help it show it all. So with the gray point shifted way over here, it really accentuates the point light source of the supernova. So maybe I won't stretch it as far as I normally do. I think that's been stacked long enough to be certain that the supernova's been detected. So what I usually do is when I load the saved picture, I'll annotate it with a couple red lines, just like you saw in the reference picture. Hopefully some of these other supernova have larger host galaxies. So the one that we're looking at right now is this one here in UGC 7744. Oh, yeah. So I'll go back to the top of the list. Try this one. That one looks pretty cool. Got good coordinates, I think. Although it's only mag 20, so it might be pretty dim to detect. This last one that we were looking at, I think, was magnitude 16-ish, somewhere in there. Yeah, 16.1. I mean, it's very apparent, but magnitude 20 is a big jump. There's another tiny one, only 1 arc minute long. That one's pretty big. I think I may have shot this one in the past, but it'll be interesting to have 2 data points to compare a new picture and an old picture and see if we can notice the brightness difference. When you're stretching like this, you can't really compare the brightnesses between stuff because it's no longer linear, but might be fun to play with. So NGC 3254. This one's right on the meridian. I think I might try and stay on this side of the meridian, and we'll poke around at all these awesome galaxies up by Ursa Major. We're not too far from M106. So this is, again, the live stack from last time. And now this is the actual individual frames coming from the camera. Looks like it's pretty close to center. Yeah, there's some other fainter objects kind of chained along. Looks like we might get both of them. I think this is pretty good framing. So we'll initiate the live stack, clear the old stuff. Actually, probably want to increase the exposure so it's not 2 seconds. I just use the 2-second exposures for framing mostly. This one looks really cool too. Looks like there's a really, really faint, massive extension to it. I don't know if I'll be able to stretch it to make it more apparent. Yeah, that shows it pretty good. There's a very, very dim extension to it. The detail in the very core is fantastic. You can see sort of the bright core is partially blocked by a dust lane. It gives it a really 3D effect. I wonder if all these smaller ones are associated or if they're just in the background. I could check the distances. Although this planetarium software is not the best for that. It doesn't provide a lot of as nice of information as like Stellarium. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to load Stellarium on my local computer that's not being live streamed. Might have to minimize the remote desktop for a second just to start Stellarium. It's a lot easier for me to get information on the objects using Stellarium than Carte de Seal. There we go. I can move this over here. So there we go. It's 22.8 million light years. Whereas this stuff in the background is 74 million light years. The detail is just fantastic. Again, in a very, very 3D effect where the dust lanes in the foreground are sort of silhouetted, but the dust lanes in the background are all lit up and highlighted. Looks like some in star forming regions right in there too. See if we can push the histogram stretch a little harder. Oops. You can even see the even the teeny tiny one back there looks like a barred spiral. And before I forget, I'll relabel this one M106. I really like Stellarium as a planetarium software. It just doesn't work natively with ASCOM for controlling the mount. You can sort of make it work with some add-ons, but you got to use an older version, and I tried to use it once and it was kind of so-so. That looks like a pretty cool one. M94. So I think that's definitely it right there. So we'll just use the handpad controller to try and get it centered. Yeah, that's probably good enough. Increasing the exposure back to 8 seconds. Just double check that the histogram's off of the left side. And we'll start the live stack. Clear the old one. M94. I don't remember. Yeah. strange. It almost looks like a dark halo around it. That looks really cool. Looks like you can just barely make out very faint sort of spiral swirls in this dimmer, diffuse outer shell. I should probably give the April Observer's Challenge object a try. So April will be NGC 2964, but the May object will be in Ursa Major, Ursa Major, where we currently are. So maybe I'll try that one first. NGC 4036. I'm going to save this one before I forget. I try to push the histogram just a little more. It's very strange, the dark ring around it. Maybe I can split the difference between these two. NGC 4036. Shut down the live stack. Yeah, looks like both of them are framed. I'm going to adjust it a little bit to try and get them centered left to right. Oh yeah, gotta bring the exposure time down to a more manageable interval. That looks pretty good. Go back to 8 seconds. And we'll start the live stack. Clear the old one. Get one last good look at it. Looks like there's a small point of light right there. I wonder if it's a foreground star. That was my gigantic goldfish. I'm going to look up a reference image of NGC 4036. There might be one in Stellarium. Nope. I don't see the point of light in that picture. I don't see it in this one either. I wonder if we check the Rochester site, if there's an ongoing supernova. So there's, we can see this kind of parallelogram, or not parallel, these 4 stars. You can see them right here. But there's definitely a brighter point of light right there. It's not there in the older reference picture. Maybe. Yeah, there's something there. Got excited, thought maybe we'd find a sweet supernova. Starting to get some detail in the fainter outer extension of this one. Just barely. So for the supernova, I've been using Rochester Astronomy. I think it's sort of a second source. It just organizes all the current visible supernova. There, I think the official reporting website's some other thing, but it's not as sort of brief and easy to get a summary. So this is the one. So this is the main page, and right here on the left is all of the current visible supernova organized by magnitude. So you can see a lot of these are, there's the name of the supernova, magnitude, type, whether it's 1A, unknown, or some other types, and the host. A lot of these have none or anonymous, which is, teeny tiny galaxies that would be in the background of a Hubble picture. So my little scope doesn't stand a chance to resolve the actual galaxy, but as long as the magnitude is bright enough, you could probably, detect the point of light. We just have to compare it against the star field. But it's fun. The magnitudes, they try to keep them up to date, so the ranking kind of shifts up and down as new things are discovered and old ones start fading away. And the ones that say type unknown, I think they haven't been confirmed by spectroscopy, so they may or may not be a supernova. I'm just curious, reading this one, it says potentially a supernova in M81, but its magnitude 19, so it probably blends in. But a lot of times, if other people have taken images of it, they'll publish the reference images, which are really useful to know, which speck of light is the supernova. It's a lot easier than trying to find a archival picture and then kind of blinking them back and forth to see if you can find the difference. I like this site, but tonight was kind of a bust, I think. Most of these are none or anonymous, and a lot of the other ones were either too low to my east, west, or south, or some of them are southern hemisphere objects. But it's fun to keep an eye out. If I had a better southern horizon, it'd be fun to try and spot this newest, brightest one. Let's take a look at this one, see how it's coming along. Can definitely see some spiral structure in that outer, fainter extension. I'll see if I can push the histogram a little more. So I've got 12 minutes worth of exposures. That's a little too much. It looks nice. I'm going to save it there and check out the April object. So the April one is NGC 2964 in Leo, so not too far. We might have to do a meridian flip to get there, but we'll see. I tried to take a picture of this pair the last time I was running the live stream, but that was during a full moon, so it was pretty difficult. So hopefully this time it'll be better. Yeah, definitely gonna have to meridian flip. That's all right. I'm going to rotate my flat frame so that I can rotate my field of view so north is up. It's kind of silly that I have to do this, but actually I don't think I have a fits editor, so I can't rotate this. So I'm gonna shoot this upside down, and then I'll just rotate the saved file. What I can do in the meantime is at least rotate the planetarium so that it matches. These two are still right side up. Maybe something there and something there. I'll increase to 2 seconds. Yeah, definitely. I'm going to nudge the view up a little bit. That's good enough. Increase the exposure to 8 seconds. Double check the histogram, and now we can start the new live stack. I might bump the gain just a teeny tiny bit. Just to, yeah, it didn't really do much. It seemed to be doing fine where it was. I'll leave it alone. I wish it wouldn't reset that every time. Another satellite. I'll reset it. There's a mode that you can run in SharpCap called Sigma clipping, which is pretty handy to avoid satellite trails like that. What it does is you can set it up to average some number of initial frames, and then if any pixel value deviates from that average by an amount that you determine, then it ignores it. So if you had a satellite streaking across the black sky, it wouldn't show up in the final stack, but I haven't played around with it. Seems very useful though. These both look like pretty interesting galaxies. So they're about the same distance. So I wonder if they're interacting. And it looks like this one's in the background. This one's looking pretty cool. It almost has the Internet Explorer logo coming out of it. Starting to get some shape definition on this one. Leave a reminder to myself that I have to flip it over. That one looks pretty cool. Maybe we'll check that one out after this one. I want to try and get at least 10 minutes on this. Just to, the longer you stack, the better it looks. Again, as long as you're not sort of using too short of a sub-exposure so that the read noise becomes an issue. So as long as your read noise is not an issue, you can, the total noise in the final image is kind of proportional to the square root of time that you spend accumulating the light. So the longer we look at it, the better it should look. And with these modern Sony CMOS sensors, they have just an absolutely incredibly low read noise, and you can get away with, 4-second exposures, no problem, no penalty in the final stack, or the penalty is so small that it becomes insignificant compared to the shot noise or other sources of noise. I think these two galaxies are NGC 2964 and NGC 2968. I should probably update my labels there. Let me just make sure I'm looking at the right stuff. Yep, 2964, 2968. Thanks for the reminder. I forgot to change the name. We'll see if we can push the histogram a little more. I think pushing it too hard, I'd start blowing out all the fine detail in this one. It's all sort of a matter of preference. I kind of like having a little bit of gray sky instead of, completely clipping it black. I like the look of that. I'll save it. And I put a little reminder in the file name to remind myself that I have to flip the view. Still have that gradient from one side to the other. I might turn my dark frame calibration back on. Looks like I'm getting a little bit of amp glow in that corner. We'll see if that helps or not. So I want to check out this one. Looks like it's right under Leo's nose. Check the wide field. It might be in a tree for me. No, looks good. Yeah, nearly centered too. Don't have to do anything. That looks pretty good in the single frame. I bet this live stack's gonna look phenomenal. Wow. NGC 2903. Looks like there's some faint extensions on this one too. I'll see if I can stretch it to exaggerate. Yeah. It's not a pretty picture, but you can see the fainter spiral arm. Looks like there's something right there, very dim. Yep. Looks like a little cluster of galaxies are over here too. Maybe after we take this picture, we'll just move right here. Wow. You can see tons of detail in the dust lanes and the spiral arms. I bet I'll try to use the sharpening feature. Sometimes it just makes the noise repulsive. With sharpening, usually I adjust it till I think it looks good, and then whatever that setting is, cut it in half. I'm usually pretty ham-handed with my adjustments. So I just turned it off, just to sort of flip it back and forth. It might sure help a little bit, but it's definitely sharpening the noise quite a bit. Let me try the other one. I don't think that's helping. It looks fine without it. See if we can stretch it anymore. I just want to temporarily exaggerate the outer extension. That's really nice. Yeah, that little bit of glow in this corner is gone, so I think the dark frame helped. I definitely have that gradient left to right. I wonder if I rotate my electroluminescent panel as I take the flat frame, if that'll help sort of on average remove any gradient. That's just such a cool galaxy. Get caught up in all the software and sliders and making the pretty pictures. You forget what you're looking at sometimes. It's just insane. Billions and billions of stars. Who knows how many planets? This one's 38 million light years away. Looks like it'd be a nice one for the color camera. It's got a pretty good color gradient. Might be big enough and bright enough to show up in the wide field camera here. You can actually live stack this camera too. This is the software that comes with it. It's pretty buggy and it doesn't work so great all the time. I have the align frames option off because for whatever reason sometimes it just flips out, locks up. The view gets full of triangles and gets corrupt or something. So there's a faint smudge there. I'll turn the crosshairs back on and yep, that's where we're looking. So even in the wide field camera we can pick up that galaxy. I keep forgetting I wanted to take wide field pictures of the challenge objects. It's nice to have, almost like a finder chart, but I get caught up in the live stacking and I forget. Wow. The detail on the dust lanes is just incredible. And just for kicks, I'm gonna point at this little cluster of galaxies, see what we can see. That is so cool. Looks like I might have a couple of them there. just trying to isolate the stars so I can compare it against the field of view that we have. So it looks like we're definitely on the right spot. Got this stream of stars and a triangle of pretty bright ones. So there's the stream and there's the triangle. So right here we've just got a mess of little galaxies. Or not little, but very far away. See if I can get some distances on those. Wish it gave the distance down in this info bar. I like the little clusters of galaxies. It's just crazy. But the little scope's doing pretty good. Some of these are magnitude 20, magnitude 17, 17, 15, 15. I don't know if we're getting that magnitude 21, but we're definitely getting all the 16s. I'm going to point at the beehive, but we'll use the wide field camera. The telescope's field of view is way too small for this. So this is a fantastic object in binoculars. The field of view of this little camera that's attached is very close to the field of view that you get in a pair of 7x35 binoculars. So you'd see something very similar to this, although the stars would be much sharper. See, a lot of these stars are oddly colored. You know, you got some green ones, and that's just an artifact of the lens that I'm using is really sharp, and it can focus the light of a star into a single pixel, and this color camera has a Bayer filter, so each pixel has a particular color. So these green stars, the light's only falling on a green filtered pixel. So the stars are not really green. If my mount didn't track so well at this magnification, then that star would move between pixels every frame, you know, as it slowly drifts around, and on average, with stacking and alignment, the color would work out to be correct. But with this wide field, low resolution camera on a really nice tracking mount, the star stays in the same exact pixel, so you get the funny colors. And this camera's only 1.2 megapixel, so it gets really rough when you zoom in. Turn off the live stack. Check out this open cluster near here. It's probably another wide field view. I think the telescope might be too tight. Yeah, it might be nice. So you can see it right there. I'll live stack this one too. And now in sharp cap, the camera and the telescope, we can stack the zoomed in tight view, but we don't get any color. But that looks really nice. I bet it'd be fantastic with a color camera if I had the two swapped. And with the star clusters, we don't really need to stretch as much. There's not a lot of diffuse faint detail. Might actually look nice to stretch it the other way. M67. Looks like there might be a planetary nearby too. This little Meade mini light bridge that I'm using is fantastic wide field scope for these big open clusters visually with the eyepiece. You can almost take the scope off the mount and cradle it and just use it freehand. I think at its lowest power with a 24mm eyepiece, it gives 16 magnification, so it's not much more than binoculars, but enormous exit pupil. Well, that looks pretty dim, whatever that is. It says magnitude 12. We'll try it. It's pretty spread out though. Just want to see what the star field looks like. Got a parallelogram here. We'll see if we find that. There's the parallelogram. So, where is the object in relation to that? Looks like it's almost centered on this corner star. So, it looks like it's pretty well centered. I'll start live stacking after I check. Yep, histogram looks good. We'll clear the old live stack. I'm not sure if this will show up or not. Not seeing much. This might benefit the ultra high contrast filter. It's supposed to be a planetary nebula, but it looks like a very diffuse one if it is. Still not seeing much. Looks like there might be like background galaxy out there. Yeah, no hint of anything. Oh well. Oh, I think I left this live stacking. It looked like it got pretty blurry. I don't have the alignment on. So I slewed to a different thing, so it's sort of double image. Ooh, that looks pretty cool. NGC 3521. I might try the Owl Nebula after this one. This one has another fantastic lighting effect. Really looks 3D. Looks like there's two dark dust lanes in the background. I'm going to try 16-second exposures on this one. You can very clearly see the central star. Again, this would really benefit the UHC filter, just for a little more contrast. Looks like I might be able to make out sort of a faint shell. Well, I think that's all I'm gonna do for tonight. It's getting pretty late. Not bad. Probably covered more than a dozen different objects. I don't think I saved all of them, but it was fun. Let's take a look. It was fun. Thanks for tuning in. Have a good one.